Welcome to the Sports Betting Podcast from pregame.com for December 17th, the week of December 17th, 2009. I'm your host, RJ Bell. I'm joined by Vegas runner, genuine professional bettor here in Las Vegas, Marco D'Angelo, 30 years in the business. This is segment 5 of 6, big game preview, Sunday Night Football, Carolina and the Vikings. Tell us about the line, Vegas runner.
Okay, Minnesota opened up as a 7.5-point road favorite with a total of 43. As of this morning, we're looking at Minnesota's up to 9. The total's still 43. The game is in a circle. Jake Delhomme has been downgraded to doubtful, which pretty much means he shouldn't be playing.
Does that help the line or hurt the line for
Carolina? Yeah, I think it's going to help it when you got 8 touchdowns and 18 interceptions thrown. How worse could it get?
All right, so we always try to predict, or not predict as much as identify the meaning of these early line moves. Is this a true steam to you, or is this a position?
I think it's just them getting ahead of the public who's going to bet Minnesota for sure, especially with Delhomme being out and not even knowing who's back up. I mean, they got Matt Moore, Hunter Cantwell, A.J. Feely, and Josh McNown.
And that's the thing. And it's funny because squares aren't always wrong. And
you can't just fade them like back in the day.
Well, you can't just fade them, but they're also not wrong in their concepts, which is, let's look at an example, for example, with this Atlanta team 2 weeks ago, is when they had their running back turner out, they had their quarterback out, and to some degree, if you were a true contrarian, you'd be like, well, the public believes that they got a second-string quarterback, second-string running back. I'm taking the value. We've you can't adjust the line enough, and you see that in totals too, where you look at the Steeler game on Thursday night, a week ago, is the total went down to 33, and from watching that game, they could have played probably another 2 quarters and not gotten to 33. Yeah. Sometimes the first instinct of there's something here, there's an effect, and I'm going to bet on that effect is right, True. Even when the lines moved. So that's how I'll segue into this for you, Marco, is when you have a second-string quarterback that is so inept or so unprepared, is it almost just an automatic fade because it's going to be a 28-7 game regardless?
In situations, I got to agree with you that you've got other factors here. If this was like earlier in the season and Carolina still had a lot of stuff to play for, I still would, my initial reaction would want to try to find a way to take the injured team because of the value. But you got other factors. They're out of the playoffs. Here's a team that went from the best record last year in the NFC to out of the playoffs. How much motivation are they going to have?
It just shows you, man, it's just amazing when you think about Tampa Bay and Carolina. And again, clearly Carolina seems a little better. But that Tampa Bay team with 4 or 5 weeks left was in the midst of the playoff hunt, like a year ago, a little bit more. And Carolina, remember they went to the Giants on that big Sunday night game, and they played them so tough.
Right.
And it was literally like a lot of people were saying, oh, you like the Giants. Carolina is the best NFC team.
And Carolina was favored to get to the Super Bowl last year. They had the home field. Remember, Arizona had to go in there and defeat them as underdogs.
In the first round. So I guess what I'm saying is, wow, does the NFL change quick?
Yeah.
And specifically this Carolina team, like you said. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
And from strictly a statistical point, fundamentally, you got Minnesota with Peterson going against one of the worst rush defenses in the NFL. Carolina, listen to these last numbers. Atlanta ran for 176. Miami, 154. Jets 139, Tampa Bay 154, and last week New England 185.
That's why they're 26th out of 32 teams.
You think fundamentally Minnesota will be able to go in here, hand the ball off to Peterson most of the night, and dominate this game. And
Carolina's 5th in pass defense, so that's what they're going to do. I mean, obviously they're.
All right, so does that make us like the under?
I do. I do like the under, and I think even look at these two teams. The trend coming in is to the under. You have Carolina, 5 of their last 6 games have played under. Minnesota, even though they're scoring, they're second in the NFL in scoring, they're stopping teams from getting in the end zone. And even they come in, they've allowed only 1 team in their last 5 to score more than 10 points on them. So now they have a situation with a backup, second or even third string quarterback. They haven't allowed 4 or 5 teams to score 2 touchdowns on them. So I think there is a lean, myself at least. I like the under 43.
And there's going to be extra motivation for Minnesota because just 2 weeks ago they played on Sunday night and they had a horrible game against Arizona. So they're going to want to make amends for that on national TV too.
Now, is it me or is this Minnesota team been one of the most effective at workmanlike wins? Where you always hear they took care of business.
Yeah.
But usually it could be a situation like New Orleans has where, it was a tough win against Washington or whatever. Or a situation where there's a couple of big plays like the Patriots did in 2007, they blew teams out. This Minnesota team seems to just like methodically,
systematically break teams down.
Break these teams down, play action pat. I mean, they're kind of like an old 80s like Oklahoma college football team where when they're the better team, they don't seem to very often get into any trouble.
The other trend I wanted to throw.
Is that how you guys feel?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Which makes you not afraid maybe to lay the bigger number with them. But
the one trend I wanted to throw at you is coming into December, we know Minnesota's never played well either. 2-7 their last 9 or 2-8, something like that against the spread in December. On the flip side, you have Carolina. They're known as one of the best late season teams in December. That's how they've done it last year.
And we have a stat on that. Is they've covered 8 of 9 games in December.
Yeah, see? And that's why. Do we throw that out the window now that they're out of the playoffs?
That's the question. Is this Carolina team, for the most part, been competitive in December where they're potentially in the playoff
And
hunt?
is the
but not
Minnesota
this
team
year?
usually who falls apart towards the end of the year, at least against the spread? Now with Favre at the controls, will that change?
Which last year specifically, and then the prior year when the Giants came into Green Bay, that's been the charge against Favre is late season issues.
Well, one thing I'll say for Favre, his arm's not gotten the workout that he had last year. He didn't have a running game in New York, so his arm was shot at the end of the year. His arm, if you saw a couple of the throws he made last week against Cincinnati, I was impressed. The guy, for his age, he's got a live arm.
27 touchdowns, 6 interceptions
for his
is what's
age,
impressive.
the case could be made he's been one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
6 INTs the whole year, dude.
And the other thing that's going to help Favre late season, he's playing indoors too. So he's not going to have those really cold weather games. And even this week, a road game in December, you get lucky that you're going to Carolina. It's not going to be freezing cold in Carolina. And 2 weeks ago, he was in Arizona. So
You're the numbers guy. Break it down. On a neutral field, according to the odds makers' ratings, they had Minnesota as a 9-point favorite on a neutral field against Carolina. That's with Delhomme in the picture, though. Mm-hmm. So now that would make around 6 at Carolina with Delhomme. So now we're looking at field goal.
You're definitely paying a premium for Minnesota. You're going to.
Which, again, if it was as easy as saying always fade the premium teams, then we wouldn't. These would be 30-second shows. But my question is, this feels like one of those kind of new school places where there's almost like a reverse backlash. Everyone's like, oh, everyone bets Minnesota because of Favre. I'm not going to bet him. And then it's like maybe there isn't that much of a premium on Minnesota right now.
I can't disagree with you, sir.
Before the season, this line was Carolina 3. So it's a big switch. 12.
Don't forget, Minnesota's still trying to catch New Orleans. Mathematically, they're still in the hunt.
Mathematically, very important. I mean, there's only a couple games left, so it's not really about, some hypothetical. Especially, and that brings up a great point. Do we reevaluate this game? Because am I correct? If New Orleans wins...
Good point.
If New Orleans wins
this
Saturday
becomes
night...
meaningless to them.
Does this become meaningless? Well, because again... If Vikings win out, they'll have 2 losses. If New Orleans loses out, though, let's say loses the last 2 games, I can't remember who they're playing, but remember, the first tiebreaker is in conference. Mm-hmm. So we know Minnesota lost to Pittsburgh. So then the question becomes, is if New Orleans' last 2 games is against NFC teams, then it still wouldn't be decided, because if they lost the last 2, Minnesota won the last 2, Minnesota win the tiebreaker, because they only have 1 loss. They have 1 loss in the AFC.
And for the division, if Green Bay loses earlier in the day to
Wrap
Pittsburgh, Minnesota has the division wrapped up.
All right, good point. All right, good stuff, guys. Next up, we're going to be previewing Monday Night Football. And remember, you can get all of our videos at pregame.tv, or if you want to download and listen, just go to iTunes, search for pregame.com.